Hello, and welcome to the third Halloween special of Jambareeqi Reviews. Yeah, this is all a bit too much. I was going to include this guy.
Good evening.
But he's very obnoxious.
Looking for a handout?
Looking for a what? Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here, and happy Halloween. Now, imagine if there was a stop-motion animated musical inspired by Charlie Manson and featuring the voices of Green Day, Good Charlotte, and Kelly Osbourne. Well, that film is real. Yep. It's called Live Freaky, Die Freaky. Now, before I review this film, let's give a bit of context on who Charlie Manson is. Charles Manson is an American musician who gathered a cult of followers from middle-class backgrounds during the 60s. As the cult grew, they moved into a commune together and called themselves the Manson family. He convinced them that he was Jesus Christ and that a race war was inevitable. After completely brainwashing his loyal followers, he exploited their devotion by commanding them to kill many Hollywood residents, including actress Sharon Tate and her unborn baby. So, without any further ado, let's talk about Live Freaky, Die Freaky. Live Freaky, Die Freaky is a stop-motion animated musical horror comedy that follows a madman called Charlie Hanson, who gains a group of loyal followers. Meanwhile, a narcissistic pregnant movie star called Sharon Tate hangs out with her Hollywood friends and teases Charlie's hippie followers. One day, Charlie decides to exploit his cult by ordering them to kill Sharon. There's also a framing device involving a nomad who finds a book on Charlie Manson many years into the future. Now, the names may have been tweaked or changed, but there's no denying that this film is pretty much about the Manson family case. But the thing is that, well, it feels like a very watered down and rushed retelling of the whole Charlie Manson story. It's like the director looked up 4 or 5 facts on Charlie Manson, then made a film about him. He doesn't seem to understand the human psychology behind how cults work. Why people join cults, how people join cults, how cult leaders get people to join their cults, and how cult leaders manipulate or brainwash people when they're in the cult. Now, the director has stated that this film is about conformity. It's a warning message to people not to conform to things, because, well, this is technically a punk rock film. It particularly wants to warn people not to join cults, of course, but because the film doesn't really dive into the human psychology of cults, then, well, it feels like it's glancing over the whole thing. The film tries to go for a very silly and goofy tone, but the question is it funny? As a whole, it's not exactly consistently hilarious. It's like someone took the term black comedy and removed the comedy. Most of this film is very humorless, and the result is a spiteful, gruesome, and grotesque film full of hate. Now, I get that this film is trying to attack the media and Hollywood, particularly how the press handled the whole Manson family case. But here's the thing, the satire in this film isn't that subtle. It's very forward, it's very on the nose. It's like it's treating the audience like idiots. It throws the satire at them, it yells it at them. It even winks at the camera like, do you get it? Do you get it? The cherry on top for this film has to be how boring it can get, and I mean it. It gets tediously dull. I haven't felt this frustrated since watching films like Dragon Blade, Hoodwinked, or even Tiny Robots. Yeah, it gets that boring. I got fed up, because there's a lot of scenes where it's just characters sat around talking about nonsense. I get the impression that the director wanted these conversations to come across as funny, but they're not. They're just really, really boring, and they serve no purpose in the plot. It's just characters sat around talking about poop and sex. Why? First of all, there's Charlie Hanson, who's meant to represent Charlie Manson. Now, the real-life Charlie Manson was a very skilled manipulator. He knew how to control and brainwash people to get them to do what he wanted. But the Charlie in this movie is just crazy, and that's it. Don't get me wrong, the real Charlie Manson is nuts, but there's more to him than that. He was cunning, he was sly. The Charlie in this movie, well, it's hard to believe that anyone would follow him. He's just a little nutty. Well, not even a little, he's really nutty, but still! What about Charlie's followers? Well, we don't really get to know them before they join the cult, so they're like strangers to us for the most part, so I didn't end up feeling fascinated about them, I wasn't interested in them, I wasn't emotionally connected to them, I wasn't invested in them. It's also not very clear whether Charlie has successfully brainwashed them. While they do show moments of respect for him, for the most part, they just take the piss out of him. This makes no sense and retracts the film's intended message about conformity. Then there is Sharon Haight, who is narcissistic, shallow, selfish, superficial, vile, and just an all-round unlikable character. She's supposed to represent the superficiality and corruption of Hollywood. But here's the thing, she's also meant to represent the real-life Sharon Tate. Isn't it a bit offensive and tasteless to take the murder victim of the Manson family and depict her in this way just to get across a satirical point about Hollywood? I don't know. I mean, I've looked into Sharon Tate and she seems like an alright person. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's more to her that I haven't discovered yet. But even when you take that context out, think about this. The character of Sharon Haight is the victim of the film. She is meant to represent the innocents. She is the only character we could have potentially had sympathy for and connected to. Instead, she's one of the most horrible characters in the film. The animation for this film is incredibly crude. It's clear that the animators don't seem to understand that character animation is basically acting. Therefore, it must rely on timing and emotion. But the animation for this film is pretty much limited to nodding and awkward arm flapping. And the faces on the characters are limited to blank stares. Yes, this is a low-budget, independent animated feature, but that doesn't change things. It's still very difficult to pay attention to the screen when it's such an eyesore. The voice acting for this film is pretty damn dreadful for the most part, and it doesn't help that the sound quality is dire. It sounds like a lot of the dialogue was recorded in different places and there was no concern about atmosphere or frequency. The end result is really difficult to listen to. Green Day's Billy Joe Armstrong provides the voice of Charlie Hansen, and well, yes, he gets into the part, but he doesn't show much range or restraint, yeah. He's not very good at being subtle or trying different kinds of emotions. He pretty much yells and screeches most of his lines.
Let me enter your 3 holes, just like the nails entered my hands and feet at cavalry.
However, he is not as bad as Kelly Osbourne as Sharon Haight. No, she cannot act. She really cannot act. She's unconvincing, she's wooden, she's dreadful. It sounds like she doesn't even know what she's reading.
The only cycle I want is a menstrual cycle, so I can stop wearing these maternity tents.
Now, because this is technically a film made by a bunch of rock stars, the strongest aspect has to be the music. The original music score is a blend of industrial rock and creepy ambience, which not only supports the film's gruesome horror imagery, but also gives the film its punk feel. Like I said, this film is also a musical. It has about 3, 4 or 5 songs in it. The question is, are these songs any good? Well, they're catchy, I can't deny that, but they do have their problems. First of all, most of them don't feel like musical numbers. One of them does, but most of them feel more like music videos, which comes off as indulgent. It's like watching a rock band promote their music video. And second of all, they don't have much of a point or a purpose. They're just there to look cool and fancy. They don't really feel like they're necessary. You could take them out and, well, nothing would really change. Live Freaky, Die Freaky isn't as funny or smart as it thinks it is. It's crude, lazy, unentertaining, hate-filled, and really boring. I can imagine that some people will get a little something out of seeing stop-motion puppets committing sex and violence, but when you brush that gimmick aside, all Live Freaky, Die Freaky has to offer is some cool music. Interestingly though, the DVD does come with the soundtrack. So if you do end up enjoying the music in the film, well, you can listen to it afterwards. I'm going to give this film 1.5 X mark strawberries out of 5. However, if you enjoyed Dominator, or the animation work of Lee Hardcastle, then you might like Live Freaky Die Freaky. So, have you seen Live Freaky Die Freaky? If you have, then let me know what you thought of the film in the comment section below. I'd love to know because, well, we all read films differently. We all have different perceptions of the movies that we watch. I've been Jambareeqi and I hope you enjoyed my review. If you did, then let me know by clicking the like button below. Cheers! In the next episode, I'm going to review The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat.